Hello, welcome to our YANA talk today. My topic today is how to live a balanced life. Let me start with a quote by Ernest Holmes. He said, "The law of cause and effect is a law of perfect balance, of logical sequence and of inevitable consequence. Whatever a man sows, he must reap." I recently felt somehow out of balance, out of sync, which showed up as getting easily irritated, a bit grumpy and quite judgmental. And somehow I wondered why. Where or in what areas of my life is there too much or too little? Where's my focus? I started reasoning with myself, somehow like this. The whole world seems to be out of order or out of balance. Wars, droughts, floods, global warming, corruptions, hijackings, etc., etc. The other morning on my way to our Sunday sacred gathering, I looked at the various billboards along the road, advertising headlines, news of various Sunday newspapers. I'm sure you've seen them as well. They have all these big headlines of all the latest tragedies and calamities that happened in life and around life. So when I looked, I noticed that there was not one positive message. And I thought that's really quite odd. Maybe I'm looking with a limited view, but I don't think so. But I couldn't find one positive, uplifting message. And I thought that's quite strange and also quite sad. Because if you go along the road and you see all these negative impressions, that put me quite in almost gloomy mood. And I also found I got almost addicted to reading all of them. And I said to myself, that's not really necessary. I can, even if there are all these things, all these billboards, it really has nothing to do with me. I don't have to look at that. There are trees around, there are flowers around, and there are beautiful people in cars. And so why not focus my attention on something which gives me more joy? So my mood went up, and actually I thought, no need to blame outside conditions. And actually at one stage I actually felt I'm entitled to being, to feeling gloomy and moody, because I'm entitled to read all that stuff, but I'm entitled, but I don't need to. There's no need for doing that. It's actually time to wake up and change my mind and choose differently. Now, what is the meaning of balance? I actually came across a lovely story about balance, and that was from a book by Dennis Merritt Jones. He wrote a book called The Art of Being. And in this book, there's a little story about the Buddha. The story goes like this. As Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, waiting for enlightenment, two musicians were arguing about the sound they were trying to get from their stringed instrument, and that distracted him, the Buddha. He was weak and tired from not eating or taking care of his body, but he wanted to see what was causing the commotion, and so he dragged himself closer to hear them. One musician would tighten the strings and the other would cry, "Not too tight, because you will break the string." And the other one would counter by saying, "Not too loose, because the string will only buzz and rattle. In the middle is just right." The master heard the wisdom contained in the argument and declared, "That's it. That's it. That is the key. Perfect balance. Not too tight, yet not too loose. Not too high, yet not too low. Not too in, yet not too out. The middle path is the way." I actually like the story, and I think it's still relevant today. To find an appropriate balance between not too much and not too little is, I think, of vital importance for our well-being, our happiness and health, especially in integrating our divinity with our humanity. Examples in my life: too much time spent on social media, like Facebook, getting lost in cyberspace, as my partner is teasing me sometimes. He said, "Where are you? Are you in cyberspace again?" Yes, and I'm on Facebook, and then I forget all about other things I actually needed to do on a particular day. And the hours pass, and I haven't done what I really needed to do, work-wise and otherwise. So I'm sure some of you might be able to relate to that. And here's another quote by Ernest Holmes. He said, "The teaching of the mystics has been that there should be a conscious courting of the divine presence. There should be a conscious receptivity to it, but a balanced one." I like the expression conscious courting of the divine presence, and a conscious receptivity to it, but a balanced one. To me, that means dedicating time to courting the divine presence by focusing on my, for instance, spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, study, visioning, versus time spent on attending to whatever is necessary to live in the material world. Family matters, work, travel, shopping, communication with friends. In the story I mentioned earlier on about the Buddha, it becomes clear to me that one has to strike a balance between the spiritual and the physical world. The Buddha, in his story, apparently neglected the physical world and focused almost totally on achieving enlightenment, thereby suffering some kind of physical weakness. Quite often I've read or heard that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, rather than being human beings having the occasional spiritual experience. I'm sure you've heard that before. I think it's quite a wise word. There's also another saying, "Be in the world, but not of the world." That indicates to me that both the spiritual as well as the human experience have their part to play in our journey through the thing called life. Looking back at my life so far, I find that many of those unpleasant and unhappy experiences have been very, very good teachers to me, especially with regard to knowing that everything shall pass, and also that I have choices. I can choose different experiences, but although that might sound simple, it might not always be easy. So the question is, where or how do I begin to live a balanced life? Here are a few suggestions. First of all, one has to become aware of being out of balance. Because if I'm not aware of it, I can't really do anything about it. For me, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, it shows up as feeling irritable, tired, restless, sometimes a bit grumpy, and certainly judgmental. If I don't get enough sleep, it becomes difficult for me the next day to focus and to be in the present moment. If I feel tired at night, it actually would be advisable to go to sleep. But sometimes I don't do that. Then I stay up and I might even fall asleep in front of the TV. And when I wake up, sometimes well after midnight, I wonder why my shoulders and my neck are so sore. I'm lying in a position that is not really harmonious for the body. So, how can I restore balance? By letting go of being stubborn and spoil myself with some rest in a comfortable bed instead of lying on the couch. Also to remember who I am, a human being, not a human doing. Letting go of what doesn't serve me any longer. Also knowing what is mine to do and what is not mine to do. Because it also brings me in balance. Because if I do too many things which are not really mine to do, then I haven't got enough time to do what is mine to do. Another example of imbalance between my humanity and my divinity is in relationships. Relationships, as far as I can know, can be the greatest teachers. Becoming aware of sometimes feeling impatient or passing judgments. Here I notice that my human self has forgotten the presence of God in the other person. If I remember the infinite presence in me, then I can see it in the other person as well. A balance between our divinity and our humanity can be restored in any area of our life. We must, however, be prepared to do the work. Self-inquiry can be good. It can be a good point to start. Just check the most important areas of your life, where one seems to be most out of balance. It could be work-wise, it could be family-wise, it could be in any of those areas. Remember the wisdom of the Buddha story earlier on, of not too up, yet not too down, not too tight, yet not too loose, and see how that might be applied. If I'm honest with myself, I will know where I am out of balance. It is not so difficult to find the middle path. To remember it, however, might be challenging at times. We can also make a resolve to live consciously right where we are in the midst of life, with all its ups and downs, and endeavor to balance our divinity with our humanity, without guilt, shame, or blame, accepting the present moment as it is. Being gentle with myself, not taking myself too seriously, not trying too hard to court the presence, and thereby creating a bigger, ever-widening gap. And in closing my talk, I think it's really good to remember that the truth that I can never be nearer to God than where I am right now. You can never be nearer to God where you are right now. Let us remember that. And in oneness I say, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I love you. Thank you.